Since 1894, the Women's Musical Club of Winnipeg has been bringing world-class musicians to Manitoba and has been supporting talented and vibrant Manitoba classical musicians as they make their way in the early stages of their professional careers. The recital series and scholarship programs have helped showcase some of the best musicians the province has to offer, while at the same time promoting homegrown talent throughout the rest of the country and the world. One of the big initiatives that the Women's Musical Club of Winnipeg has to offer is the WMC McLellan competition for solo performance that is held every 2 years. And Friday, November the 12th, is the deadline for this year's WMC McLellan competition applicants. Here to tell us more about the competition and some of the amazing things that the competition has to offer, I am joined by Belle Meiklejohn, chair of the WMC McLellan competition. Hi, Belle. It's nice to have you here.
Chris. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I thought I would first start by, can you just give us a little bit of background behind the WMC scholarship competition? Who is the McLellan in the McLellan competition?
Right.
How long has the competition been going on? And what are some of the goals of the competition?
Okay. Well, Doris McLellan was a long-time attender of the Women's Musical Club concerts, because we also have a concert series. And when she died, she left a significant amount of $250,000 to the Women's Musical Club to support, how would I say, emerging artists of classical music and voice, and to give them an opportunity to perform with a symphony. And this is something that is not always an easy thing to come by.
Yeah.
And so the first competition was held in 2006, and there are two people who were really important in getting this off the ground, and one was Margaret Jeffries, who is an honorary member of the board now, and Carol Gamby, who is still on the board. They worked diligently to get this off the ground.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing.
Yeah,
now, this money,
go ahead.
This money is with the Winnipeg Foundation, and so what our responsibility is to administer this competition. So that responsibility means that we have to raise money, for the venues, for the symphony, for adjudicators. But the prize money is secure with the Winnipeg Foundation.
So it's an endowment?
It is like an endowment, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, and the prize money is every 2 years is a total of $20,000. The first prize being $10,000, the second prize being $6,000, and the third prize $4,000.
Oh, wow.
And this is a significant amount.
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually, it's wherever it's a significant amount for emerging artists. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Women's Musical Club of Winnipeg has successfully been supporting Manitoba artists for more than 100 years, and there have been some real success stories.
Uh-huh.
Mel Braun, Tracy Dull, David Morose, Valdine Anderson. The list goes on and on. And the McLellan competition has been around since 2006. Can you give us some examples of the recent prize winners and what they're doing now?
Well, absolutely. In 2012, there was the unique experience of the first prize being tied.
Oh, wow.
And one of those was Maddie Hildebrand, who the Winnipeg music scene knows very well.
Yeah.
And Maddie is now back in New York studying for her PhD in piano performance. And the other person who tied was Jessica Strong, who over the past 4 or 5 years has been in Europe and is currently in the Netherlands, not only performing but manages her own music school.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the interesting thing at that point. Also, other people who are well known in the Winnipeg music scene are people like Sarah Jo Kirsch and, of course, Andrea Lett.
Yes, the singer,
And people know Sidney Clark has been performing
right, another
with
great
the
singer.
opera,
Yeah,
and David Liam
Roberts.
Yes, and his cello, and some of these people being around last year because of COVID, made their, how would I say, their stamp even more prominent in the city. But David is in his last year at the Glenn Gould School, and I think is looking to study further, perhaps in Berlin.
Yeah.
And we also have Paul Williamson,
Right,
pianist.
the pianist, yeah.
Yeah. And then Gregory Lewis, Gregory and David Liam and Paul have a trio, and they performed for our virtual concert last
The Zyra
April.
trio, if I recall. Yeah.
Wonderful. And Gregory is now entering a PhD program in violin performance at Yale.
Oh, wow.
And Paul, and on it goes. So it's very exciting.
For me, whenever I think of winners in the McLellan competition, I always think of the Durda brothers. You've got Keith Durda, the trombone player who played with the Canadian Brass and who's now playing second with the WSO, and his brother Jeff, who is a violinist now with the WSO.
Yes.
So winners have gone on to very successful careers and are still working on their educations. Yeah.
That's right. And also, when you were mentioning some of the previous winners, even like David Moreau's, and now his daughter Juliana was a winner in the 2020 competition. And
right, Juliana the cellist.
Yes. So it's really exciting, and the exciting thing about these competitions are you see how they grow, and how their music changes, and and they mature, and the interpretation. It's quite lovely.
It sounds so great.
Yeah.
The application deadline for entrance to the WMC McLellan competition is coming up fast. The deadline is on the 12th.
Right.
That is when all of the recordings need to be received.
Right.
Who is eligible to compete in the competition?
Well, we asked that it's described as being an advanced, a student or performer. And the age range goes from for instrumentalists from 18 to 30, and for voice it's 20 to 35, because voices
the voice takes a while to mature.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that's about as. It may sound like a simple definition, but most of these applicants, but not necessarily all, are pursuing studies, some at the bachelor's level, but a lot have completed and are now pursuing postgraduate work and or performing.
Right. And then my other question that goes along with that is the repertoire. Can they specialize in, like, say, 20th century music or Baroque music? Like, can all of their selections be from the Baroque period, or does it have to be a wider cross section of the repertoire? And I'm thinking here of singers. Yeah. Can they only sing in German, or do they have to show that they can sing in different languages as well?
We do. Well, the preliminary round, which is coming up, the deadline being next week, it's how would I say? It's a little more, it's not so closely defined. We do ask for a range on their MP3s and no more than 25 minutes. But when it gets to the semifinals, we do ask for example for singers to be singing in 3 languages.
Right.
And for other instrumentalists to do different, say 2 to 3 different periods, just to show
that they can do it all.
Most of them are best in 1 or 2, but we do ask for that. And then at the finals, obviously, as long as it works with the WSO, they have some choice in what their repertoire will be.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. You're sort of the symphony can only play what they can get their hands on, right? As far as parts.
Right.
So
Now, there are times in which, but it is the responsibility of the competitor they would have to make the music available, and then the WSO would have to say, yes, we have the capacity to pick that up and do that. But that hasn't happened in a while. So, yeah, it's potentially could be an issue, but at this point, that's how it's. That's how it works.
It makes sense, and especially I think, if you're planning on doing like a really new work, even if it's well known, sometimes it's expensive for the orchestra to order in parts from wherever.
Or for them or for us to cover that cost. So that is a limit, but it's not necessarily a big limit.
So the deadline for the preliminary round is coming up on the 12th. It's a Friday, so that's when the MP3s and the waves need to be in for recordings.
Yes.
When did the semifinals take place, and when did the finals take place?
Well, first of all, the results of the initial of the preliminary round are published towards the sometime around the beginning of January. So. And then that gives these 12 selected semifinalists a few weeks to hone, to practice for the semifinals, which will be on the 26th of February this year. And this year they will be held at St. Andrews River Heights United Church. So that's a new tryout for us. We'll see. It's a very good place.
Yeah, I'm sure churches are always great to play in.
Yeah. And then the finals will be on Wednesday evening and April 20th at the Jubilee Auditorium at the Mennonite Brethren Collegiate Institute. And the finals have always been there. I mean, it's the wonderful acoustics. Yeah. It has a stage which will hold the symphony.
Yeah.
And the piano is very good Bosendorfer. So, so that's how that process works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so for our listeners out there, all applicants who submit waves and MP3s, what will happen is, correct me if I'm wrong in this, they'll get listened to by the adjudicators.
It's a blind audition.
Blind audition, and the recordings will get narrowed down to 12 semifinalists, right?
Right. And obviously it becomes more challenging when we've had an inundation of applications, and it has happened. So what we do is we've asked them to order the top 18, and then we have a way of, statistically it works.
Right.
If you're 18, you get one. If you're number one, you get 18. And then
yes, yeah.
We add and subtract.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an onerous job, but it's pretty straightforward. Yeah.
As the person who runs the WMC McLellan competition, why do you do it, and what's the most rewarding thing for you about volunteering your time?
Oh, well, about 10 years ago, I thought, I started looking for what might, interest me in volunteering, and my husband and I were given 2 tickets to this McLellan competition, and it was in 2012 actually, and we had never heard of the McLellan competition, and we went, and I thought, you know what, this looks like a pretty cool thing to be part of, and so a couple of years later, I was able to join the board, and sort of worked along with Carol Gamby, and then I took over and did the 2018 and the 2020. So this is my 3rd round.
And what's the most rewarding thing? I mean, you were talking earlier about seeing them progress. Is that the most rewarding thing, or?
Well, there is ultimately that is part of it. I don't know. I just think it's rather I shouldn't use the word fun because it's not always fun, but it is kind of neat being able to do this work for emerging students, period. It just happens to be that I enjoy music, and it's just fun to think that you're supporting these artists who are going forward. Honestly, it is.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely. I get it.
It's cool. Oh, good.
Yeah. Amazing. It's so amazing. For those interested in taking part or wanting to find out more about the WMC McLellan competition, where can they go to find out more?
Okay, the best place to go is our website, which is wmcwpg.ca.
Right.
And then just click on the McLellan, and you should be able to follow from there. It gives the eligibility criteria, and then you can email in to register, so you can open up and fill in your application. Yeah.
Right, and start that process. So once again, the deadline for applicants is on November 12th. It's Friday the 12th.
Right.
So that's when the recordings need to be in.
And the applications.
Yes,
and the money.
And the applications, and yes, all the support,
Yeah.
all the needed materials.
Yes.
For those Classic 107 listeners, if you go to classic107.com, I've embedded a direct link to the McLellan competition's website. You can find that once again at classic107.com, and just click on the link that I provide in the article. Belle, thanks again. It's been a great time chatting with you today.
Thanks, Chris. Take care.